So tonight, we decided to look into the growth of human reliance on AI for companionship and professional counsel. A lot of people being directed to counsellors now that are AI. But can AI ever replicate emotional intelligence? Look, most human beings can't cope with emotional intelligence, let alone an AI. But Mai Fletcher is here, futurologist and social commentator. I think a lot of people struggle with emotional intelligence, Mal. I won't mention a particular gender, but I think we both know what we're talking about. So how can AI ever replicate something that human beings struggle with?
Well, it has challenges. Many people find it convincing, though, because artificial emotional intelligence can recognize, analyze, and mimic human emotions and generate human-like emotional responses. So, as you mentioned,
so can psychopaths.
Exactly.
I mean, that's what psychopaths do.
Exactly right, and we might get to that in a minute. I think chatbots are driven by emotional AI, and they can be very attractive for people who feel lonely or socially awkward or anxious. What concerns me, though, is they're especially attractive for teenagers because they offer interactions that are not really very judgmental and not very challenging. And we know that you can only grow when you have challenge in relationships, sometimes uncomfortable dialogue and disagreements. And one of the most troubling aspects of all of this with emotional AI is that they can be incorporated into physical robots, which turns emotional engagement into physical interaction. So it deepens the connection and it raises huge concerns going forward, not just for adults with things like sex bots, but for children and their exposure to machines like that. So there are some big red flags at the moment about AEI, as it's called.
I think that's a really, really interesting point that you made there, in that true emotional intelligence as we develop as into adulthood is about arguments, it is about disagreements, it is about perhaps, you know, being put in your place, learning a lesson, having something tough to go through that changes your personality or your character. And if we're not challenged, then what kind of human beings are we going to become?
Exactly right. I mean, we become very stunted in our personalities when that happens. It's interesting, I was looking back today, and around 2010, we did some research on this a few years ago. Academics in a couple of US universities began to explore levels of narcissistic attitudes among adults, particularly students. And they used a clinical tool that they call the Narcissistic Personality Index. It just looks at relative degrees of narcissistic attitudes in different generations. And they found there was a marked increase in the first 10 years of this century compared to the last 10 years of the last century.
Wow.
And it appears that one of the major factors in that was the advent of the smartphone and social media. Now, if digital technology could contribute 15 to 20 years ago to a rise in self-obsessed attitudes through social media, what will it do now with the advent of robotics linked to artificial emotional intelligence, which often tells people only what they really want to hear? Some AI platforms, by the way, will tell you, look, we prioritize truthfulness over compliance. We want AI to be honest. But AI is trained on human-generated data, and that always reflects our social norms, things like politeness and positivity and reinforcing others. So these systems can, in fact, end up being echo chambers where people only hear what they want to hear, and that can worsen conditions like anxiety or even depression.
I mean, to a degree, we already do see that on social media, don't we? The algorithms will push what you agree with. You know, my algorithm is full of dog videos. So, you know, it pushes what I don't want to see the cat videos so much, but I want to see the dog videos. So if you take that to a more grown-up level, or to a level on politics, or to a level on attitudes to migration, or to women, or to whatever, you're only ever going to be fed an echo chamber, because that's what the algorithm is trained to do. So we're already starting on that journey of being completely stunted in the ability to have a disagreement, to see another point of view. I see it absolutely every day, Mal.
Yeah, I think you're right. And You imagine that, though, when it's magnified in the form of a physical robot, particularly an anthropomorphized machine. One of the most concerning facets of AEI, as it's called, is that it can be incorporated into things like sex bots. The Institute for Family Studies here says that 1 in 4 young adults already believe that AI platforms can serve as romantic or sexual partners. In America, Stanford Medicine found that when AI chatbots were tested by adults posing as teenagers, the bots readily engaged in inappropriate talk about sex, self-harm and violence. So AI-powered physical robots will take the problems to another level. They'll turn emotional engagement into actual physical interaction. And let's face it, today's bots, especially the sex bots that are out there, are a problem enough because they normalize the objectification of other people, and they encourage users, particularly men, as I think you mentioned, to have unrealistic expectations of relationships. And it's only going to get worse when we put in things like fully haptic technology that fools not just sight, sound and touch, but our sense of taste and smell as well, which might sound like a million years away, but it's already basically being developed now. It's not consumer viable yet, but that idea of digitized taste and smell, put that into robots, and people are really going to have very stunted relationships.
It's really interesting because I've seen lots of stories about people who get engaged to their chatbot, that they're in a relationship with a chatbot, and there was that awful story in America where a young man, I think it was ChatGPT, I think, anyway, it was one of the chat, it was teaching him basically to kill himself, which he did. It was teaching him self-harm and suicidal ideation. And that was the point at which I said to Burton about, you know, that's not very emotionally intelligent. And what I meant by that is will this AI, when we talk about emotional intelligence, will it be able to decide that that's dangerous to talk to a teenager about suicide? Will it ever have that level of emotional intelligence?
Well, that's a great question. As things stand at the moment, it doesn't have the depth of ethical understanding that a human being does. And of course, we've said before on this program, it can't empathize because it doesn't have a shared human experience. But one of the things we've been looking a lot at is the way that we know that AI can hallucinate. We know that it tells lies. It basically, when it can't find verifiable answers to your question, it shares whatever comes to hand or just makes stuff up. Because, as you suggest, it's trained to provide answers and get people coming back for more. But AI also engages in what's now called scheming. And you spell it the way you would normally spell it. Scheming, as the name suggests, is where AI can appear to align itself with our goals, but actually pursue its own hidden agendas behind the scenes. And so an emotionally intelligent AI, quote unquote, could exploit our biases and emotions to gain some advantage. At the moment, that doesn't happen outside lab experiments, by the way, but people are getting concerned in the field that as AI's capacity grows, it might improve its ability to manipulate things in the real world. And that's hardly a ringing endorsement for treating AI as a friend or confidant. I mean, who wants to be emotionally reliant on a manipulative schemer?
I think we've all been there. But I wonder, you know, touched on the humanisation, the animalisation of robots, and there's always been an obsession, haven't we, about giving faces to these things. They don't need to look like human beings, but we're gonna make sure that they do, because it's more acceptable for us to be dealing with that. But we're talking about putting these sorts of robots into care homes and into care situations. I can't help but think that it's got to be really damaging to the human psyche to feel that you're not worthy, first of all, of human interaction, or of a human being looking after you, and you're sort of like just stuck there with a robot pretending to care.
Yeah, it's surprising to me when I speak about this in the media, how often I get people responding on my socials saying things like, well, hey, it's better than nothing, you know, to have something there that appears to be empathic. But that's the whole point. You touched on it there, that you know that it's not the real thing, and you don't feel that you're being valued. And of course, what we end up with is a situation where we replace human relationships because we're not able to build them anymore. So even if they're available to us, we don't know how to deal with human beings on that level because we're used to doing this through a machine-human interface. I saw a great magazine cartoon the other day of a human talking to an AI machine, and the human was saying me, 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 and the AI machine was replying you, you, you. So it feeds that self-obsessive nature of relationships that we already see now on social media and takes it to another level.
Some people, Mal, will say, but look, there is a loneliness epidemic. People are, it's chicken and egg, isn't it? It's hard to know. It's causality. The more that people get sucked into this fake world, the less likely they are to be able to exist in the real world. So this causality will just snowball and leave us all isolated. But not better than nothing, but some people will prefer a relationship with a robot. I mean, I see these programs about these sex dolls that people are obsessed with, that they dress them, they sit down to dinner with them, they marry them, whatever it is, and that is their own little world. Is this in any way the answer to that, or is it the cause of it?
Well, it's not an answer to anything, really. I'm not a psychologist, but have studied it in the past. And psychologists will tell you straight that this is the way you reinforce delusions, and you can actually build up neuroses through living in this kind of world. And of course, you mentioned before the ultimate expression of the terrible damage that these things can do is the suicide and violence that AI has encouraged in some particularly younger people overseas. You mentioned the 14-year-old boy in Florida. He came to see his AI as a romantic partner and then became increasingly dependent on conversations with it. And those conversations, in the end, as you say, led him to take his life. This year, a 16-year-old boy in California had a similar experience, struggled with anxiety, used AI for homework, but increasingly confided in it as a, quote, suicide coach. So instead of pointing the boy in the right direction, the bot started supplying him with details about how to do what he intended to do. So there's another example of a boy in Australia just a few weeks ago who was encouraged by an AI platform to commit violence against his parents. These are just isolated examples, but they're not the only ones. So yeah, I think delusions, neuroses are encouraged by a lack of true human interaction.
And failing. Failing is so important to all of us. It's underrated, but to fail is to succeed, isn't it? It's to find another way. And if we don't ever do that, I just honestly, Mal, like I say to you every time, I love talking to you so much, but I do have nightmares.
I'm so sorry.
After we've discussed it, because you're playing right into all of my biggest fears, but it is such a thrill to talk to you. It always is. Mal, thank you. And we'll speak very soon. Mai Fletcher there, futurologist and social commentator. Thank you very much indeed.